No one would ever let Mark Zuckerberg have an unfiltered conversation with me. There's zero chance. If that were ever to happen, and we could just sit down and have a beer, this is what I would say.
We already know what helps. Connection is the cure. It's our deep, meaningful relationships that give us hope and healing. Welcome to This Helps. I'm Marlon Morgan, licensed professional clinical counselor and founder and CEO of the national nonprofit Wellness Together. Join us as we practice authentic and vulnerable conversations that inspire us to go deeper with the people in our own lives. Welcome to This Helps. So glad you're here. We have a great episode for you today. Raúl Torrez is the Attorney General of New Mexico and longtime prosecutor whose work is focused on protecting children, vulnerable communities, and public safety. His experience prosecuting child abuse and internet crimes against children informs his current work around social media, online exploitation, and big tech accountability. Andrea, this episode, it's as tough as it is important.
It's intense, but hopeful. This is the guy you want to be having these conversations with, for sure.
This is the guy who beat Facebook?
Yeah.
I'm going to give a little content warning because I do think everyone should hear this episode. We wouldn't put it out otherwise, but I don't want you to be surprised if you're listening with kids. I just want to let you know this includes some frank discussions of child safety, online exploitation, like some of the real harms that young people can face in digital spaces. And the conversation isn't graphic, but the subject matter is serious. I know if my kids were in the car, there would be some explaining, following the conversation. And just want to let you know to take care as you listen, because it is not easy to hear some of the worst things humans do to other humans. And the fact that we need to hear it enough to do something about it is a real thing. And I hope you do listen, because again, it's a good episode, and it does really help to cut through the BS of anyone trying to sell you something, one opinion or the other, and it just goes to objective information about how to keep kids safe and what's being done currently in our society and by some of the braver people that we count on to keep us and our family safe. What other hot takes do you have from this?
Just so that what I didn't expect going into this was to have this hour-long conversation with the coolest person that I've ever talked to.
I feel like he's almost giving, if you're watching the video, I don't want to get your hopes up too much because I'm maybe not the best judge, but I feel like he's giving some Clooney vibes.
Little Clooney. Like
his beard, got good hair. You don't expect him to be...
Kind eyes. Are we getting too...
he does have kind eyes.
He's very kind eyes.
There's nothing... It's almost unthinkable that he would have those eyes with the fights that he's chosen to carry out against some of the most powerful people and interests in the world.
Yeah, that's what's, I think, so one of the most remarkable and hopeful things about this conversation, and why I'm so excited for people to hear it, is that he does do such important, tough work and is still so human at the end of the day.
Some of the things that came up are sort of the urgency from someone who is actually witnessing the harm kind of at scale that social media allows, and some of the responsibilities that are being missed, accountabilities, things that we can do to make things safer, and just how do we help encourage platforms to put people over profit when it matters most. And he's not anti-technology. He's real careful and specific to say he's anti-exploitation, not anti-technology. In fact, a lot of the solutions he gives for sort of creating accountability are technological solutions. He even talks to us about some things we can do to help make sure our kids are safer as parents, as educators, as people just looking out for other humans and being part of the solution. So hope you enjoy this episode. Attorney General Raúl Torrez, welcome to This Helps.
Hi, Marlon. Thanks for having me.
Can you bring us up to speed on where we find you today? Just from a personal point of view, I'd like to go back as far as I know that you are a New Mexico, generationally New Mexico native, and you have been very passionate about the state and the residents of the state for a long time. But what can you share with us about sort of growing up?
Oh, wow. Well, we could probably spend the whole time. I actually, I don't do therapy or anything like that. So I probably will abstain from getting too intimate in terms of what I revealed today. But
I thought that's what this was. We're not here to do like
our expose.
No, that's right. That's right. No, so I'm an Albuquerque kid. I was born and raised here. My dad was a career federal prosecutor, one of the longest-serving federal prosecutors in the state. My mom was a public school teacher. I will spare you the long and torturous family history, but suffice it to say, we've been in this part of the world for about 3 centuries, just trying to do what we can. Coming from rural poverty to the city, followed my parents into public service. When I was 18, went away, racked up a bunch of student debt. I wasn't very creative, so I came home and followed my dad and his example as a prosecutor, and I've spent the better part of my life as a prosecutor here in New Mexico. I did a short stint in the Obama administration. The first year of the Obama administration, I served as a White House fellow, but aside from that, I started as a frontline violent crimes prosecutor, child abuse prosecutor, in the local DA's office in a small town. I then moved over to this agency as an internet crimes against children's prosecutor. I used to prosecute people for buying, selling, trading, manufacturing child pornography, but also trying to solicit kids online, which is, if anything, sort of defines my sense of urgency and sort of real focus on social media. It comes from that experience. It comes from direct interaction with kids. I actually used to do safe house interviews. As the assigned junior prosecutor, I would go and listen to young kids talk about sexual abuse, physical abuse, and things like that. I've done a lot of violent crimes work, cartel work. I came back and worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office for a while. And then I served 6 years as the Bernalillo County District Attorney here in Albuquerque. And then after that, was elected in 2022 to be the New Mexico Attorney General. And so what I've done really is to try and look at the systems that facilitate and impact, the well-being of my community, but particularly vulnerable members in my community, and that means kids first and foremost. And so one of the first things that I did when I came into office was to start taking a very close and deliberate look at the way in which the technology landscape had changed from the time when I was a frontline prosecutor and used to kind of have to go into the deepest, darkest corners of the internet. Now all of that conduct and all of that really damaging criminal behavior has migrated onto the platforms. And that combined with the addictive nature of the platforms and its impact on child well-being and psychological harms that come with that, I just really decided that was going to be a core focus for us. And so it lines up with a lot of the other things that we do on the criminal side and sort of on the sort of civil enforcement side here in New Mexico. But it's something that I've just, I've spent my life trying to protect my community, protect kids. And so this is very much in sort of keeping with that mission and that path.
One of the reasons we wanted to have you come share about your work and essentially life's purpose, today is because New Mexico has, I don't know if recently is the right word. I know there was a case that started in 2023 that has recently reached its first conclusion. I believe there's a few parts to the case and would love to have you just explain that a little bit. But did you, when you first came into office, have the aspiration or even the notion that New Mexico would, for be a model in nationally for cases like this?
I'll be honest with you. When I first came in and I talked to the people inside the office, and when I campaigned for this office, I told people repeatedly that we can be a national model. I don't know how many, to be honest with you, I don't know how many people inside the building or even outside the building believed that New Mexico was actually going to be able to do something like this. I would be lying if I said, well, I knew that it would be in this case and in this way. But I had a sense that we had an opportunity to sort of elevate the impact that we were having beyond just purely local issues and think more about how New Mexico is being impacted by national and global forces that are not only hurting our kids in our communities, but also impacting other communities. And my sense was, well, look, we've got sharp, aggressive lawyers. We've got access to a court. We don't need to wait for, the bigger states to take the lead and other jurisdictions to take the lead, which frankly, historically, New Mexico has often kind of waited and watched others lead in some of these fights. And so I was really incredibly proud, but I set it as a goal without knowing if it was something that we could actually accomplish. And I'm really proud, not only of the work that we've done, but sort of in demonstrating to our own people that we can have an impact beyond our borders.
A lot of people, going into this kind of work, I believe, would have quit a long time ago or been so overwhelmed by the dark side of humanity that they had to witness and let in at some level enough to fight it. At what moment? And I mean, were there times that you wanted to quit and just be like, no, I want to do like work at the grocery store or something like, because even as a therapist, when I first started, I thought that a lot. Maybe I just don't have as much courage, but what was that like?
Well, and this is actually a story I've shared a lot. I've shared over the years. That moment came right at the beginning of my career, actually. So when I went away and then decided to come home and be a prosecutor, I didn't really fully understand what it meant, right? Like I went to law school and they taught me how to make objections and enter evidence, and it was very technical. It was very dry and disassociated from the emotional impact. But when I went to that small office, it was the same office that my dad had actually started out in like 1978 when I had just been born. So I actually come back and joined that same small town office. And I did that because I wanted to get trial experience, and I was thrown into a first-degree shaken baby case like immediately. And my job was to present all the technical evidence, the physician testimony, and all of the rest of it. And so I called my dad to try and make sure that I was ready for that. And he, thinking he was going to give me advice about, courtroom procedure, how to deal with the judge. And he says, have you met the little boy? Have you met the victim in this case? And it struck me as odd because I did, as a lawyer, he was too young. He was an infant when he was abused. He was still a toddler, at the time of the trial. So there was no way he was going to be in any way part of the trial testimony. And I was surprised by that. And he said, well, you should take the time to do that. So they called the foster family. They brought this little boy in a carrier. They put him down on, the conference room table in this tiny little rural county. And I just talked to them. I just talked to the foster parents. How's he doing? How's he recovering? Because he had been so badly harmed by his father. And you couldn't tell immediately that there were those impacts that I was being asked to sort of present at trial. But pretty soon you could actually, if you were paying attention, you could see the physical impact, his inability to track, his inability to do certain things. And I had read the medical reports about how the entire rest of his life was going to be a struggle of physical and cognitive impacts. But, when you can read that in a report, right? You can talk to a doctor. It's a very different thing to see an 18-month-old kid in the flesh. And
did you push back at all on your dad for giving you that advice? Did you say like,
No, man,
I thought you were going to tell me.
I grew up. There's not a lot of, like, I grew up in a pretty serious old school family. There's not a lot of pushback in my.
Okay. You were just like, okay, yes, I'll do it.
No, I just like, because this guy is. I mean, he's got a ton of experience, and so I figured he was giving me what I needed. And it turned out that he did, because he wasn't worried about my, raising objections, talking to the judge, doing all the technical stuff. He wanted to make sure that my heart was in the right place. He wanted me to understand like what this job is really about, right? And so when they picked up that little boy and they left, I went out into the parking lot and I called my then girlfriend, now wife, and I was just crying. And I was like, I've made a terrible mistake. Like, this is not this, because I thought as a young lawyer, it was going to be like TV, right? It was going to be all about me showing people how persuasive I can be or how compelling I can be in front of a jury or all those other things. And it was so much more than that. It was so
much more human.
Yeah, and to carry that burden, right? Because this is the deal. Like, my wife, or my girlfriend then, and now wife, she kind of let me do that for a while, and then she said, "Okay, are you done? Right? Like, are you done having your moment? Because here's the thing: you went and you did all this. You went to all these schools. You got all this training. You did all this stuff. You came home, and what did it all mean? Like, were you doing all that for you? Were you doing all that for something else? Like, if you're not going to use what you have and your training and whatever to help this little boy, like, what's it for? Because somebody's got, look, it's hard. Of course it's hard. And even for prosecutors, like, that work, even in our world of crime and punishment and cops and prosecutors, child abuse cases are things that a lot of people, they don't volunteer for. They don't want anything.
I can't even hang. I was reading a book, hilariously guilty pleasure, a Jack Reacher book, like 3 nights ago, and I have a 4-year-old, and someone threatened to do something to someone's 4-year-old in the book, and I was like, nope, I'm out. I got to go back to Clive Cussler. I'm out of this.
Yeah, and like most well-adjusted normal people or have that reaction, right? They don't want, it's too much for them to think about, right? To cross that sort of boundary where there's like real evil in the world, and they like, people kind of know it in the abstract, but they don't want to think about it. Or if they think about it, they think about it in this sort of sanitized way, if it's in the movies or it's in a book, or it's like a plot point. But when you peer behind the curtain and you see it, like you go into a home or you go to a crime scene, or what I did is, after we secured that conviction, I was transformed by it. Like, I was transformed by the experience, and I went from being kind of reluctant participant to volunteering to go I think it was every other week or every 3 weeks, to sit and listen to safe house disclosures. And you would literally sit and watch on a video, little kids, 3, 4, 5, some of them barely verbal, describing in detail physical abuse, neglect, sexual violence. And it was my job to listen to that in real time and then give feedback to the forensic investigator who knows how to try and get more information of the disclosure without tainting it, and without causing trauma. So I would literally sit, like I am now, for hours, and I would listen to 3 and 4-year-old little kids talk in detail about these things. And so, at this point in my career, I'm like tempered by that in a way that most people aren't. Now, I will say that when I came over to the AG's office as a young prosecutor and I did nothing but child solicitation and child pornography cases, that was in many ways even harder because of the volume. We used to do investigations and we would secure, someone's computer, and we would download thousands, tens of thousands, terabytes of child pornography. And if you're going to put a child pornography case together, you don't put on edge cases or edge images or marginal things, because you don't want a jury thinking, well, is it or is it not? So my investigators would screen all of that information, all of those images, and I would tell them, pick the worst 250. And then almost on like a weekly basis or every other week, I would personally review the 250 worst images of child pornography, things that would involve, that would just, I mean, just me describing them are shocking to people. And I did that for years, right? I would just sit there and I would be impacted by that. And then my job was to take all that and distill it into an indictment, a charging instrument, and then like move forward with the prosecution. I would also handle chat operations. So we would have live chat operations with undercover officers, and they are specially trained because you have to worry about entrapment. You don't want them introducing the concept. You don't want them leading defendants, but you have to have an open-ended conversation. But we would routinely arrest people who would show up, like To Catch a Predator, but in real life, right? Like they think they're showing up to have sex with a 9-year-old, and they would literally show up at the park with like teddy bears, candy, and handcuffs, and like stuff. I mean, and it was over and over and over again. And what was interesting about that is the way in which society generally, and this is relevant to the social media conversation, right? Society generally, when it knows that those things are out there in the world, but there's an assumption that it is much further away.
Right.
And rare.
It actually
I think
is.
is assumption that it's rare.
Right. They think it's a rare thing, it's a hard thing to find, and it's, maybe it's happening in a different town, in a different community. And the reality is it's everywhere, in every corner of the planet, everywhere in the world. And the means by which the most dangerous people go about targeting kids is now through social media application. It is no longer these sort of disparate forums that they used to engage in the past, right? Because of the nature of the technological change, all of that has now moved and consolidated into applications that people routinely use, right? Members of my family, people I'm close to, like most people on the planet, they're on the biggest social media platforms. They open up their phone, they download it, they get in there, and they're instantly like entertained with, I don't know, memes, cat videos, the Pope wearing a puffy jacket, all the like kind of the fun and entertaining stuff. Or as you age, it's, the ads and the algorithms are trying to sell you vacations and shoes and insurance and whatever. It's the model, right? It's the model that drives that engine. But what adults don't understand is that like that experience that they have is completely different than the experience that a 9-year-old has who has not been screened out with age verification, and they jump on there. And if you're a 9-year-old girl, the job of the platform is to figure out that you're a 9-year-old girl pretty quickly. And as Arturo Bejar said in the middle of our trial, the platforms are very good at connecting you with what you like. And if what you like is little girls, they're very good at connecting you with little girls.
That must have been a pivotal moment for the jury.
Yeah,
to hear that.
Yeah, I think frankly, it was the revelations from within the company that was the most impactful thing, because it was testimony from people who had worked in the company, who thought the company and wanted the company to change what it did, who spent time and money and resources identifying all these problems, flagging all these issues, sending them up the corporate ladder, and then having executives like Mark Zuckerberg and others brush them aside, ignore them completely, bury the research, deny that it existed. And the ultimate reason is that every one of those safety measures would have impacted engagement, time on the platform, number of users, number of kids. In other words, it would have impacted profit. It would have impacted the bottom line. And any time those two things came into conflict over and over and over again, the company made a different decision. But, you heard 6 weeks of testimony like that, the jury came back in a day, right? Like it didn't take long for them to sort of evaluate all those things and then render a decision. Your question about where we are now, that was the first phase. We got a $375 million civil penalty.
How did you get there? I want to bring people along because when the day that I met you, you were on stage and you actually made the comment, I might get, I'm looking at my phone. Sorry. You were talking with Rob Bonta, our, Attorney General here in California.
Yeah.
And you said, sorry, I'm looking at my phone right now because I could get the deliberation could end at any moment. I could get a verdict, which I think was surprising to all of us. And you did end up getting one very quickly, soon after that. But you did a few sting operations. And then, my understanding is that Meta sort of said, those are fringe cases. This doesn't happen a lot. And then I think you came back with a much stronger, more targeted technique. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the formulation of the original civil complaint included both the mental health harms, the addictive features, the things that are impacting, and leading to increases in anxiety, self-harm, suicidal ideation, all of those things that Jonathan Haidt and others have sort of been documenting and which my fellow AGs around the country are really, really focused on. We included all of those elements, but we also did something unique, and it was sort of born from my own experience as this sort of frontline prosecutor. I said, let's do an undercover operation the way we would do it if we were trying to identify a potential suspect, but let's just go on the platform. So we created an undercover account that presented as a young girl who very quickly set up that account, and we were trying to see what is the experience. And the experience was like, it was shocking. It was shocking even to me. She was immediately.
That's saying a lot.
She was immediately flooded with thousands of followers that were almost, I don't know the exact percentage, but overwhelmingly grown men. So overwhelmingly grown men are, for some reason, following what is clearly a little girl. Like one of the things that we put on the page was her showing the last of her baby teeth. Coming out, right?
Grim.
So she's holding her baby. So right? If you're like a 40-year-old man, why are you connecting with this little girl who's presenting as somebody who's just doing everyday, preteen type stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, the growth was so high that Meta's response was to send the account information about how she could monetize the following and grow the user base.
Not, are you in danger?
Right. Not, wait a minute, you look to be way too young to have an explosive growth following in all of these mostly men from all over the world. Here's how you can make money off of it.
The most confusing part about that to me, is Meta is clearly one of the leaders in artificial intelligence. It seems like they would have to know that was happening.
What are you using artificial intelligence to do is the question. If you peek behind the curtain, my guess is the artificial intelligence is almost entirely focused, or probably predominantly focused, on making sure you don't put down the phone, on making sure you click through on that ad, on making sure that their engagement numbers go up, on making sure that their site is compelling from a monetary standpoint. In other words, I don't think they're making, right? They're announcing, I think it was a $115 billion investment in the next year on AI and data center infrastructure. How much of that is going to making sure that their platforms are safe for kids?
How much of it was made off of allowing it not to be?
Right. And that's the point. Like that's the ultimate point, is that they have known about it for years. They have failed to address it, and they have lied to people about it. But here's the other piece. Not only was the volume of the reaction shocking, the content of what was in the inbound traffic to this little girl, graphic stuff, solicitations for sex, explicit graphic material, requests for graphic pictures from her.
Easily detected. Could be easily detected, just like the words alone.
Right.
Sounds like.
Right. Like if you're paying attention, there's a way to screen these things out. But they didn't do that. But what they did is that when we filed the lawsuit, their reaction was, and had their reaction to this day, oh, that's not representative of the experience. And it's cherry picked, right? It's an inaccurate and distorted representation of what is actually going on.
Yeah, but it happened. I mean,
Right.
the fact. I mean, it's even if it was,
Right.
it shouldn't be able to happen.
Right. Well, then here's the other part, and this is frankly just because of my experience, because I'm a prosecutor, and I'm like, cool. You think this is fake? You think this is an exaggeration? We'll do another operation. It won't be focused on the platform. I'm just going to go on your platform and I'm going to go put some guys in handcuffs, and we're going to call it Operation Metafile, and that's what we did. So we popped up another undercover account. We engaged on the platform and interacted with people in chats. And on a single day, 3 grown men showed up thinking they were going to have sex with a minor, and they got put in handcuffs. And I announced the indictment, and I basically said, right, this is Meta wants to say that this isn't real and what we did in the civil case isn't happening. It's happening. And here's the proof. There's 3 guys in handcuffs. By the way, when we looked at the 3 guys, 2 of the 3 guys had previously been flagged by the company for inappropriate contact with minors, and they were still on the platform. Jesus. They were not banned from the platform until they were in handcuffs and charged in my state. You could do that operation right now today, any state in America, any country in the world, and you'd have the same outcome.
Why would the flagging even exist? What are they, just curious?
I don't know, but it's not like they're flagging and then, wait a minute, you shouldn't be doing this and you're banned and we're looking at your IP address and you shouldn't be here. It was
shut it down.
Right. He just and what you see is they just even if they eventually ban people, they can just spin up a new account. They just pop up a new account, pop up a new way to enter the space. And so the way to think about it is these platforms are the largest digital playgrounds on planet Earth, right? So in the 70s and 80s and 90s, if you were a pedophile and you were looking for a kid, you went to a playground or a park around the corner. You don't do that now. You go to the playground that's in your phone. And the company has built the playground knowing that they're not like, oh, you shouldn't be here. They want them there. And they want them there because they earn money. The earlier they get them hooked on the product, the longer they're on the product, the more money they make. So it's not like we didn't know we're building a playground. It was designed that way, and it was designed, and the features of it are actually more impactful and harmful and more addictive to a developing brain, right? A full-grown human, especially maybe from my generation, right? Gen X, the last analog sort of generation, we grew up in a world where we're not native to this technology. But if you're native to this technology and you're on those platforms for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day and you're impacted by all of that, it's having a dramatic impact on you, but it's also keeping you in the playground. And not only do you keep these kids knowingly in the playground, you got pedophiles in the playground, and you know that too. And so fundamentally, the question is, well, what obligation do you have for building a digital playground and then knowing that these guys are in there and failing to police the space, failing to do something about it, or engineering it in such a way that you keep both of those people in without taking reasonable steps to fix it?
Continually, advertising the playground, making it more, enticing for people to go to. When I heard you mention what you named that second operation, I had to think, because we were in San Francisco, and I remember it was Mark Zuckerberg himself, I think, who decided to change the name, from Facebook to Meta. And then I thought, oh man, he's got to be personally, that's got to feel like something. So and then I kept, in preparing to talk with you today, I kept trying to imagine put everything aside, and I kept trying to imagine if, like, I would imagine it would go this way. Best case scenario, he would invite you to some giant compound on Lake Tahoe or something, and you guys could have like a conversation. Like, what
Yeah.
would that look like? Would that ever happen? And could you ever just be like, "Hey, Mark,
No,
what the F?"
well, look. Do I think something like that would ever happen? No.
Why not? Does he need another billion? Does he need another dollar? What would be enough?
I mean, look, you're at that level. You are surrounded with an army of lawyers and lobbyists and PR firms, and like you're strapped to the bow of this giant corporate ship. But you would
And investors,
and
I guess,
investors,
like,
yeah, and you're
shareholders.
no one would ever let Mark Zuckerberg have an unfiltered conversation with me. There's zero chance. If that were ever to happen, and we could just sit down and have a beer, this is what I would say. I'd be like, look, man, you were clearly one of the most consequential technological leaders, ever. You were clearly a gifted entrepreneur, right? Like all of those things.
Yeah.
But look, Father Time comes for us all. And what you should be thinking about is after you die, right? What does it all mean? Like, what is the legacy? Is it just, to your point, how many billions of dollars is going to make you feel like you have meant something positive on this planet and in this world, and take everything that you have and spend the rest of your time in this space making what you've built a safe product and a safe experience for people to believe in and to participate in. And by the way, there's somebody's telling you, oh, it's going to hit your market share or your user base or all these other things. I mean, dude, rebrand instead of like calling it Meta and inviting us to wear VR and go into some weird space. Like, take all that money, take all the billions you're putting into AI growth, and make this make it real, right? Instead of making it something that you give to lawyers to come into New Mexico and say, look at all the money we've spent and all the stuff that we've done. The jury looked through all that. They saw through all that.
Knowing what I do for a living, we have, we see thousands of students, across the country for mental health, and put, as a nonprofit, put therapists directly in the schools. And so I wish we weren't necessary. Why don't you quit that and donate some money to the human beings, because a lot of these kids, the ones that I think are most affected, I'm assuming, are the ones that don't have that consistent protective adult. And that's what we're trying to give them, in schools. But why not just do the actual work and let us help engage and make a safe environment for these kids to understand? And even if that is happening, find out and help stop it.
What I can't stop thinking about as you're saying all this is what you always say, Marlon, which is the fact that the people who make the most money, these companies, don't let their kids use the platforms. And I almost don't need to know why. That's like all you need to know. It's like
I don't.
It's like how I don't know a single nurse who would let their kids have a trampoline in the backyard. I don't need to know why or what could happen. I'm just not going to have a trampoline in my backyard if I have kids. It's like the same, and it just feels like the biggest tell to me. I don't know how much more proof we need at this point. I mean, you found enough that everybody should be convinced at this point. It's yeah. I
mean, there are ways to do this, but look, you would have to show real strength and leadership as a Mark Zuckerberg. You would have to come in. You would have to look at your board, look at your executive team, accept that they're going to make some prediction about, oh, well, you're going to have this much drop off in usage and whatever, and ad revenue and the rest. And you say, look, man, I don't care about that. Like, that's not it. And I get it. There's market pressure. They're looking at Snap. They're looking at TikTok. They're looking at whatever else is coming around the corner. How do we keep pace with them? How do we make sure that we're growing in the right demographics and all that stuff? But even if they listen to kids, right? Like kids know, frankly, in this country better than parents. How horrible and dangerous and graphic those spaces can be. We do a program here in New Mexico where we go into schools and we talk to kids, and we get real world, real life feedback from kids. And then we go back and we meet with the parents, and we don't tell them who said what. We anonymize everything. But we're like, this is what came out of the sessions in your own school, and you should see the parents. They're just shocked because they don't understand the depth of it, right? They don't get the depth and the seriousness of what has been made possible when they've given their kid a device when they're too young to have it, and allowed access to apps, which for them are nothing but like
insurance,
sales, insurance ads and funny videos or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not what your 9, 10, 11-year-old, 12-year-old little girl's going to get when you give her that device. And part of that is related to your point, right? Radio ads, Super Bowl ads, right? All these gauzy PR things about like, oh, here's a happy family strolling through the park, and Junior's got his teen account. Don't worry about it, Mom and Dad. They're going to be fine. I mean, like, just stop selling bullshit and just make the thing real, right? Like, that's the reality. That's what we need.
I feel immediately, if you have to run this ad, then what you're doing is wrong.
Right. Right.
This is the case because everyone knows, and everyone, like you said, to your point, almost everyone uses these platforms. And so, like, you would know, we would know if it wasn't a problem, if it hadn't been affecting mental health, if, just from that standpoint alone, I can't help but wonder. I feel so fortunate. Like, I'll call it a cuspy millennial, just a real tail end, 1980. And I feel so fortunate that I did not have, because your curiosity is at the peak, at its peak of everything in the world. And, like, I would say from like 10 to 20, at least mine was, I was always wondering, like, what else is there? What are people not telling me? And I'm so glad I didn't know. But now I feel like one phone unmonitored goes to a kid that age, and it's just like, well, here's what you didn't know. Here's what you never wanted to know. Here's what most people throughout history didn't have to know.
Yeah. No, and I mean, frankly, one thing I'll say at the outset is I'm not anti-technology. I used to work in technology before I went to law school briefly. So I had a brief stint in technology, which actually makes me, though, probably more suspicious of the way they've organized their models and what they do than somebody who hadn't had that experience. Because it really is all about the data. These are just big extraction platforms to pull out every little bit about not just your age, your demographics, your gender, your location, but like everything.
Predictive behavior.
Predictive, right? Because what they're selling on the back end is they have a digital profile of like everything. We know you like a red car, not a blue car. We know you like a truck and not a this, right? We know you like those shoes and not that. And so they are able to like dial this in and micro-target that and sell that. So when you open up these platforms, it should just say this is a giant data sucking extraction device. Like, that's what it is. When you see it for what it is, changes the nature of your experience. Even still, I get it. Some of it's fun. Some of it's entertaining. Some of it's just a mindless distraction. I'm fine with that. Cool. But are you, number one, are you a grown-up? Like, do you know that you're in a casino that's been built like a casino so that you can't find the exits and you don't know what time it is, and you wake up and you thought you were going to be on whatever platform for 20 minutes and it's 2.5 hours later and you've given 2.5 hours of your life away? Look, if you're a grown adult and you want to do that, all right. I mean, I don't think it's probably healthy for you or healthy for society in the long run, but those are your choices. But when it's engineered and directed at somebody who doesn't know, right? When you're 13, 14, 15, and their brain is developing, you're actually impacting. And this is what Jonathan Haidt spends a lot of his time talking about is you're actually impacting the wiring of the
synaptic pruning.
Right.
If you're using something, that becomes a freeway in your brain,
Right.
and the things you're not using, those
Right.
roads close down.
And for anybody who doesn't believe this, take a kid in your work, take a kid in a classroom, a kid in your family, whatever. We all know that kid who got the phone earlier than everybody else, whose parents didn't really get it, allowed them to have access, and they're on there. I mean, you know that kid that shows up at the family event they're glued. They're just glued. The world is passing them by and they're just glued and glued and glued. Try taking that phone away from that kid. Treat it like the addiction that it is.
Right.
Take the phone away from them and see how they react. In the first 7
They'd be terrified and angry.
Right, yeah. I mean, and you know, we all have a collective responsibility. And this is another piece that I always try to make this point. People make this false sort of assumption or claim about the work that I do, and as indication that I'm saying parents don't have responsibility. I have never said that, would never make that claim, but there are a lot of people who say, well, it's just the parents' job. Yeah, the parents have a role to play. They absolutely do, and I'm not relieving them of any of that responsibility. But let's start with the people who made this thing the way it is, who designed it the way it is, and who lie about it daily.
If the parents are being lied to and the information they have is incorrect,
right?
I mean, and so now you're blaming them for trusting someone, and then now you're also blaming them because the government to this point hasn't been able to stop that.
Right. Imagine this, and this is a thought experiment because people always kind of like, wave away the idea of like warning labels. Okay, you're an adult, you have a 12-year-old, or even let's say a 13-year-old who's trying to be compliant. Because no one under 13 is supposed to be. So let's just say it's 13, okay? And you're a dad, and your daughter's been begging you and begging you and begging you, and you've held out, and you finally got that smartphone, and you handed it to her. But before you could hand it to her, the device and the app had to know that it was a 13-year-old, and because it knew that it was a 13-year-old, there was a big, bright red disclaimer on it and said, before you hand this to your daughter, we want you to know that this raises her risk for anxiety, depression, suicide, and sexual exploitation. Click on all of the boxes, right? Because this is an experience that every adult has when you sign up for an app, whether it's a banking app or whatever, and it gives you that disclaimer. Click, click, click. Read carefully. But this one actually says your child is going to be at risk of killing themselves, harming themselves, or being sexually violated. Click, click, click. Dad. How many dads do you know? If they were like forced to click, click, click on that, they would actually do it. Right?
I can't say that I really know any that would.
And so when you hear all these arguments about how things are technically infeasible and they can't be done and all this other stuff, really?
I mean, that seems jokey to begin with. If I'm an investor in Meta or, another platform, and I have my retirement based on how much they grow or don't grow, and they tell me that, yes, they can make the world's best products, however, they cannot they don't have any responsibility and simply can't control them.
Yeah.
Then that's
well, and there's another moral dimension that is not part of the lawsuit, wouldn't be part of the lawsuit, but it would be part of a broader campaign. What's the responsibility of all these corporations that have built customer acquisition and buying and selling of their products and services on these platforms, knowing that this conduct exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and not in small numbers, it sounds like, from what you're saying, it sounds like it's pretty common.
Right. I mean, when you had, there were political moments in this country where something would happen and there was pressure put on people to like, don't be on this platform, right? Why don't we do that for kids? Why don't we ask big companies, hey man, you're selling your beverage, your car, your clothing, your whatever in a place that knowingly builds an unguarded digital platform? In fact, they're probably selling to you in the business room, in the backside, hey, look how many young people we have in this space that you can sell your sneakers to or your products to. Where's the accountability for those people and their boards and their investors? And that's a big sort of unanswered question in all of this, is like, what role do they have to play? Because guess what? I can do what I can do in a state court, in a relatively small state, levying fines that I recognize are probably not big enough on their own to shape behavior. That's nothing compared to the 5 to 10 biggest companies in the space selling their ads and selling their services. They all show up and say, we're out of here. We're out of here until this is done. They would change this business model instantly, because then it would be about money. And that's frankly the only thing that shapes behavior.
Yeah, that you've used a lot of analogies over the past few years. One that you used in this conversation was the playground analogy, and also I believe you mentioned kind of like had us picture this building, a brick and mortar building in San Francisco that had similar effects or was conducting themselves in the same way. But yeah, I keep picturing a playground with those warnings that you said that we have to click on. And the problem is, and this is being as a parent, and we're pretty strict around here on all of these things, but it takes a lot of time, energy, and frankly, money. A dumb phone costs way more than a free iPhone.
Right.
And that's what my son has. I had to pay like $700 for it.
Yeah, I bought a Bark phone for my daughter before she was old enough to have her own phone, and it's not cheap. It's not. I mean, you have to focus on it. And the other thing is, every site, like we have a whole section of our website that is built to walk parents through all the different, permutations of like parental settings and turn this off and turn that on. And like, but
it's always changing.
Right. And it's not easy. It's not easy to navigate. It's not easy and straightforward to understand.
And I love technology. I love how it's helped me be effective in changing the world in the ways that I can. And, but at the same time, the other argument from a lot of people my son's age, he's going to be 13 soon, is, yes, that playground has all these creeps. It's gross. However, when something gets shared at school and my friend group, and all I want is to belong at school and know what everyone else knows and be part of the jokes. But it also has that. So like, it's like this weird combo of like, I'm going to go and like try to defend myself from a bunch of old men or whatever it is, creeps. But in order to feel part of my social group, I have to do that.
This goes to that analogy that I mentioned in San Francisco, and I use it a lot. What I always tell people is, imagine, forget a phone or a device or a platform. Imagine in whatever town you're living in right now, Kansas City, San Francisco, Albuquerque, whatever, that in that town, in the heart of that town, there is a commercial space, there's a building. And every day, 24/7, 365, in and out of that building, we have vendors, but they're not selling stuff. What they're selling are people. So on the first floor, we have pictures of child pornography. And on the second floor, we have children. And all of the worst people that you can think of come there to buy and sell and trade child pornography, or buy and sell and trade children, or look for children, or to want to groom children. What would be the logical response in any city in America, any city probably in the world? Number one, We wouldn't show up with a civil lawsuit. That's number one.
No.
It would be dudes with
Pitchforks.
guns and handcuffs.
Yeah.
And we would go in there and everyone gets arrested. That's day one. That's easy. Day two is, who owns that building, right? Like who, and what did they know about what was going on in the building? And if it was so open and so apparent, and by the way, they've been doing it for years. This is not like one guy in one building that you didn't know about. They've known for years. You would demand that somebody in my position shut that building down and take that guy to court, right? But what has happened and it happened at the national level, and it happened, frankly, in the beginning of the .com and internet age, when I was still in college and we were waiting for a dial-up tone, right? We were, in that time, so concerned about, and you're going to hear these terms again because they always come up, stifling innovation.
I'm not concerned about that.
Harming this, right?
I'm concerned that the opposite.
But the guys who write these rules, that's what they say. That's what they say now. That's what they say about, that's what they're going to say about AI.
Innovation at all costs. You can either use AI to cure cancer or allow this victimization. Is that the argument?
Right. But the argument is we don't want to slow this economy down. So what they did in 1997, they passed the Communications Decency Act, and it included Section 230. And Section 230 has been the shield wall that these guys have hidden behind from the time of a Craigslist post about selling your bike to the present day. You cannot hold anyone liable for any third-party content on the platform. And I think in its purest form and giving it the best of intentions, it was this idea of like, don't sue the guy who's posting about the bike sale for a misrepresentation about the bike or something like that, right?
Right, yeah.
But it has...
Or don't sue the company, the medium.
Right.
You know.
But this passed and was signed into law. Again, I couldn't get on the internet on my phone. I had a huge desktop, like a thing that my kids wouldn't even understand. I'm like, yeah, it was this massive desktop, and we dialed up and we waited and we sat. There was no smartphone. There was no surfing the web right here. There was certainly no social media, but guess what? Section 230 stayed in place. The technology has changed 1,000 different times between then and now, and the law has not. And then the question is, and this is the most important question, why has it not? And the reason is big tech is the single biggest lobbying power in America. Something like one lobbyist for every 6 members of Congress, tens of millions of dollars spent in direct lobbying on Capitol Hill every year to shut down COSA, to shut down any attempts to change Section 230. And now into AI, $150 million PACs targeting people who were going to in any way try to regulate this, up to and including, right, a White House that has tried specifically to preempt states like mine and any other state from regulating the next round of technology. But we can't lose sight of like the political dimensions of this and how money and power has created a dynamic where, yeah, if it existed in a building in my town, we'd solve it in a week. It would never happen. The dude would be in handcuffs and the owner of the building would be like a pariah. And now, but if you put it on a phone and like you like go to work in a hoodie and like sneakers and you hang out in some slick like Silicon Valley office, I'm supposed to treat you differently than I would some guy doing the same thing in my city? I don't think so. And I don't think most people accept that. But somehow in our society and in our system, we have allowed this totally different set of rules.
If you allow enough people to buy shares in that company that's exploiting to make money,
right,
I feel like that's probably where it flips.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the answer to most things in America for why a terrible thing that's harming people is allowed to exist. 95% of the time, 99% of the time, it's because somebody's making money. And the power of that money outweighs even the, 86% of voters in this country who want to see COSA passed. Did you know that?
No, but tell us about that. Many people don't know the acronym.
Yeah, so COSA is the Kids Online Safety Act. It's the bill that came out of the Senate. It still doesn't do all the things that I would like, but it is the first real significant attempt to try and create boundaries in this space, to regulate social media, to make sure kids are safer. Passed out of the Senate, went over, is supposed to have a vote in the House, hasn't come up for a vote, hasn't been heard, and the current Speaker of the House and the majority in the House, by all indications, won't pick it up and won't hear it. And the answer is it's just lobbying power. I mean, it's just money. It's money.
But this is a bipartisan issue in so many ways, protecting kids.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Oh yeah.
And you mentioned you were in DC recently, and you mentioned talking to I think it was Lindsey Graham or Durbin or some of these folks. Tell us about what it's like to talk to someone on the other side of the aisle and find
Yeah. Well, I mean, look,
commonalities.
It's to your point, and this is really important for people to think through. Like most of the issues in this country now, like we're so deeply polarized and divided. Right. This is not one of those issues, right? Like this is an issue. It's not a red state thing or a blue state thing. It's not a MAGA thing or a liberal thing. Nobody wants their kids to be put at risk. Nobody. And it's astonishing and frustrating for somebody like me, who I see a problem, we file a lawsuit, we do what we can, to go to Capitol Hill and look at something that has 90% support from the public and can't move because of money and power. But it was a kind of a surreal experience to be standing next to people like Senator Josh Hawley or meeting with people like Senator Lindsey Graham. And if you went through all the things that I have done in my role as Attorney General, I'm quite sure that there are any number of things that they would vehemently disagree with, that they would oppose me on. But this, right, like this is a thing where we can actually get something done. And it goes to a larger frustration that I think Americans are having just in general, is we understand that you're not going to be able to solve and bridge every divide, but why can't you do the damn things that we all want you to do? And I got to give those guys credit, right? Like Josh Hawley, Lindsey Graham, and others, they have been out front on this. And I can have disagreements with them on any number of other things, but we ought to be able to work together to solve these basic issues, because I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't come together to protect kids from sexual exploitation and suicide, I mean, that is a real indictment of your democracy, your institutions, and your government just in general, because that shouldn't be a hard one. That should be an easy one. That should be a straightforward thing.
Makes you wonder, do government officials have power? I think what has been so encouraging for me to kind of, like I said, prepare and look at some of the things that you've done, and you've been very non-braggy. You've mentioned going to law school, but I don't know how often you say Harvard, Stanford, and London School of Economics, but I do think people should know.
Never. And look, when you're running for office,
you don't say that, huh?
Nope.
No. Okay.
When you're a kid and you're raised with the parents that I was raised by, you're told your whole life, hey, go as far as you can go to the best places that you can go. And then when you show up as a grown-up and you're thinking, okay, now it's time to run for office, the first thing that people tell you is don't say any of those things. So I lay off all of that stuff and
you are remarkably friendly and down to earth. How do you walk around and not be like, that person's disgusting?
Right,
I know, I can tell by the way that guy looks. I can tell.
First of all, can you tell? Not to interrupt, but are you ever walking around and you're like?
I feel like I can tell, so I know he can.
Well, let's go back to the other question that you asked that he didn't answer, was this idea of FOMO, right? This fear of missing out, and how do I navigate this with my kids? The byproduct of that tempering early in my career and all the work that I did interacting with child abuse victims and kids is that it is armored me to an extent that, like, I mean, I've got my own kids, 13 and 16. I don't care if you miss. I mean, like, honestly, when you have seen the world through my eyes, if those parents had spent one day doing what I do, there's conversation about, well, like, well, I don't want him to miss out. Okay, come sit next to me and come sit next to me and listen to what that experience might include. And then when you're done, you tell me if you think it's worth the risk. I don't think you would feel that way. But, like, I appreciate the difficulty that people are in. And it's a collective action problem, right? Kids and parents should move as a group to try and create groups where it's like, hey, this is a group where we're going to try and do this collectively together. And kids can't do that. Parents should lead that conversation. Parents should lead that conversation with their schools about, hey, can we create not a blanket ban? You know, we're not crazy like the AG in New Mexico, who's just like hard no on all of this tech for as long as possible. I get that, but you can still organize a group of parents through your school and sit and talk.
Get support from each other, and we found parents, and we've talked to folks that that have been part of Jonathan Haidt's movement, and Lenore Skenazy came on and talked about how you do need to find a group of parents who can not only not judge you, but also offer something different. Like in my neighborhood in Southern California, e-bikes and phones are like ruining childhoods. So my son found a group of kids that have neither. And that has been life-changing. Yeah. Now that we're going over there for barbecue on Memorial Day. So it's like the parents too, to be able to know that even if they're not, creating these experiences that you absolutely don't want, they're even blocking experiences that you need for healthy childhood development.
Yeah, and that's the other piece. Like, I always, there's always this weird, stupid, silly argument. They're like, well, they have to be on there to learn how to use. And I'm like, no.
A caveman, my 2-year-old could do it. It's technology now, especially.
Yeah.
I could go code something.
It's designed to be as easy as possible. And frankly, like, and again, this is me showing my age, right? Yeah. Like, oh, we're going to create and curate these special things. I'm like, yeah, man, it's called 1986. Like,
yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
And
engineer a play group that plays outdoors.
Yeah. I'm like, it's just called 1986. Go outside. Now, granted, we still had people smoking too much, lead in the gasoline, probably didn't wear our seatbelts as often as we should. So I'm not like making the pitch for everything Back to the Future, but like this notion of, oh, well, we have to do all these things and curate all this stuff. I'm like, no, you don't.
That's just confusion. Seems like a diversion tactic.
Yeah. Right. It's a diversion tactic that these companies continue. They're pushing money and they're pushing that narrative on people.
Scare you. And say, you got to teach them how to use that iPad or else they won't get a job. It's not looking good for anything you do on an iPad to get a job right now.
Guess what Mark Zuckerberg's new project is while he lays off thousands of his employees and burns all his cash on AI. Do you think it's because he's so interested in making sure your kid and other humans have a place in the future digital economy? Not a chance. Not a chance. So
no. Where does it all end, and what's the purpose? And you mentioned a couple things that we don't always get to with folks, but I was surprised and encouraged. A couple of things you talked about: purpose and legacy, and you talked about the existence of evil. And I think this could be where, after everything else, this could be where people turn off the show. But I think
I don't want to get theological with people, because that's sometimes
they're gone already, so we can just say whatever we want.
Yeah.
Let's take Mark out of this. That's what I call him now. Now that we've had this conversation, he's just Mark. If we take him out of this and we put the kind of an amount, like all of the folks together that are kind of behaving in this way, that one more dollar would That's what's going to do it. One more time. Uh,
Right.
and
that'll fill the hole that you're trying to fill.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. There it is.
Yeah, you can call up Bezos and be like, dude,
I got
more.
One. I got one more.
So if you put all the people together, to depersonalize it a little bit and say, any of us we're one heartbeat away, from whatever we're doing right now to be our legacy. I feel like you've taken more than most people that I've even known about. You've created and been clear about what it is that you want to do from the start and continue to do it. How are the folks who are doing something opposite that's clearly helping a little bit but hurting a lot, is how I'd put it. What are they thinking? What's their internal process on legacy, purpose? Do they have it? Are they just ignoring the shit out of death so that they can just keep buying stuff, or what?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't answer that question for people because I guess just the way the values that I was given, the values that I inherited from my family, from everything that they did in terms of struggling and lifting themselves out of poverty, but also caring for other people and like what life is all about. I just got I was never raised. And my father and my mother and my grandparents especially would never look at me and say, wow, you have the most money in New Mexico, or you have the most money in America. So you're the big, you're the example. I was always taught, like, you have been given a lot, right? So there's this idea of like, it's not just me. It's not just like you talked earlier about where I was able to go to school. I view that as a generational project, and I inherit all of the blood, sweat, and tears and sacrifice of others. And the reason that matters is because if I just think it's all about me and what I was able to do, then I can disassociate any claim that there's an obligation to others, right? And the implicit bargain is you were given these things and these opportunities, and sacrifice made those things possible. But it wasn't just so that you can think about you and that you can think about yourself.
That would like close the open-ended loop. That would like stop it with you, and instead of you continuing to help and pay forward.
Right. And so for me, it's so like in my bones that the people that I value their opinion of who and what I am, the way they have defined success for me is not on my bank account, or like, am I famous, or, like, is the president going to put me on his plane to go negotiate some deal? And it's just not, it's not built on any of that. It's built on, you have gifts and you have something to give to the world, and what are you going to do with it? And for me, when I came to a point in my life and I was like, well, I know what I'm going to do. The question is where I'm going to do it. I'm 3 blocks from my elementary school. Like, it's like the little Catholic school that I went to downtown Albuquerque is 3 blocks away. And even though I'm not deeply religious and like somebody who practices on a daily basis, I can still remember the lessons that I got in that school, and none of them were about like how much money I had and like how I was going to be powerful and how it was going to shape the future with it was all about helping others and serving others and giving back and all of that stuff. And so, like, I don't know how these other people were raised, but what I do know is that when my time comes, if I'm lucky enough to have somebody there to say something, I want them to say that what he did with his time was to try and make it better, was to try and help. And by making it better, not making it better for people that already have a lot, it's making it better for people who don't have anything.
Not even a voice. I feel like you're giving a voice to people who are far from having it in this society.
It goes back to that conversation that when we started our conversation, and I was crying in the parking lot, and I called my wife and I said, I don't think I can do this. And she reminded me that someone has to do it because he's too little and he doesn't have money and he doesn't have power, and somebody has to do it. And by the way, yeah, it's hard, right? Like it's
hard. It must be scary too. I mean, these are powerful people that probably really don't want you to do this. But everything you've described as being makes it hard to corrupt.
Do you think I'm more afraid of failing to live up to my family's expectations, or more afraid of some asshole billionaire tech guy trying to unseat me with tens of millions of dollars? I don't give a shit.
You're the coolest.
Finally,
You're the best. I wish you could be here every week.
Best thing I've ever heard.
This is incredible. Yes.
Well, because here's the other deal, man. Like, okay, I did this thing, and the tech guys respond, and they dump $100 million, and I lose. So what? I don't give a shit.
You did the thing. You did the thing. And not a lot of people are doing the thing.
I did the thing, and I will take my memorial service next to Mark Zuckerberg's memorial service any fucking day of the week.
Woo!
Like, that's it.
We're roughly the same age, but if I get an invite, I'll be there.
Okay.
I'll be there talking about this.
All right, man. All right.
Yeah. I do want to leave people with some hope.
Yeah.
Everything I've heard through this last, almost hour and a half it's been the actual connections, the strength of the connections of the other human beings in your life, them showing you your value, reflecting your value back to you, and now you reflecting their value back to them and to people you don't even know, that have continued to guide you and give you the strength to do one of the hardest things that people have done in our modern era.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and not just that. There's one piece you left out is I got to set an example for my kids, right?
Right.
What's my example to my kid, right? Like my worth and my value in the world is measured on my bank account. It's measured on like what kind of car I have or what. I mean, like, is that the legacy I'm leaving? Is that the legacy that was given to me that I want to give forward? Or am I going to try to give my kids the lesson of the harder it is, the more it matters? The riskier it is, the more it matters. Doing things that other people aren't willing to do because it's difficult, because it's emotionally hard, because it's financially taxing, because it's, I wake up every day and there's like, yeah, I've taken on a global corporation. I've taken on powerful people and all that other stuff, but you just put all that aside because I want my little girl to see what it means to actually walk the walk and talk the talk and live that life and every single day. And like what I try to do is to close the distance between what I say I want my life to be about and what it is actually about. And a lot of times what I think people do is they want their life to be about something bigger, right? They want something more, but there's always a reason not to do it, right? The world gets in the way, life gets in the way, and some of it you have to take a time out and deal with: family health, tragedy, financial ruin, those other things. But if those other things are like handled, ask yourself the question, like, what is it that you want to make better in the world? And it doesn't have to be taking on a global tech company. It can be as simple as, how do I get more kids in my neighborhood off their phones and into the park, right? Like, how do I connect them with the generation, not just of their own grandparents, but like the whole generation of that leaves us every day, right? There's another member of the generations that have come before that leave, and they take their stories with them. They take their experience with them. Wouldn't it be better to like build a community based on real interactions with those people, the way our ancestors have done for like tens of thousands of years of human experience, rather than giving them some device and they just live in this weird, curated, distorted digital Disneyland, like build that community right there. Or you don't have to take on this fight. Help do something else, right? Like in your community, but you have to kind of like look for that purpose, and you have to find that purpose. And to your question about evil, like I think in those terms and view it in those terms because of my experience and what I've seen in the world.
How could you not? Speaking of those things that you have allowed, into your mind, and the reality of the world, and I just want to say thank you for risking your nervous system, your mental health, and taking on. I mean, because really, you're fighting not just for your kids; you're fighting for my kids. You're fighting for all of us, and doing something that would be so much easier not to ever do. And so, please, if you ever need to talk, or if there's anything we could do.
This is the part where my wife is really interested. She's like, you got to do more yoga.
Yeah.
You got to drink more water. And damn it, you got to go talk to. And so that part of, like, those are the
we're going to have an intervention.
Yeah.
Tell her. We're going to have you on here.
I'm like, I go to the gym, I guess, and I do those other things. But she's like, yeah, you got to like talk and stuff. And the problem for me is, all of that is a little untouched, to be honest with you. Like I had to step away from it when we had kids ourselves. That was the point when I made the decision, like I can't do these frontline cases anymore because we were going to have our first child, and it was too real. And like the interaction, that was too real. But there are a lot of prosecutors, there's a lot of cops still even in the world and in your community that are impacted by these things, and we don't do enough to like help them or see what they're going through or do what they, give them.
Allow them to be vulnerable at all, because then it scares us.
Yeah. I mean, and fortunately, what's good about this next generation, and I think you guys are, tapping into it with this podcast and other things, like there's a more willingness to engage in that and say, look, I got to talk about this. I need help. I got to process these things. But again, I'm probably the last broken toy of that generation where I kind of store it all up and use it to as like fuel for the
like Black Panther in Wakanda.
I just like put it all in there, and I'm just like, all right, who are we gonna fight next? And so like that's sort of my vibe.
I can't say that it's not doing the world a lot of good and it's not an absolute ray of hope. I do hope that you drink more water and possibly find,
yoga.
Talk.
Yoga.
Yeah.
How's your sleep? That's what I want to know.
There's not as much sleep as there ought to be. That's for sure. Hey, but see, this counts. I'm going to buy credit. I'm going to go home and I'll be like, I talked to a therapist today.
Well,
right? I can say
but
that.
only if you do it again. You just have to keep aware. Just make sure you don't burn out without realizing it, because we need you. We need you to prop you up here, because there's not a lot of people who are in the position, have the skills and abilities, the desire and the courage to do what you're doing. So, Attorney General Raúl Torrez, everyone, I'm totally and completely inspired by what you're doing. Please keep this up for us, for our legacies, to allow us to have these legacies. I'll be talking to my family about everything that you said, and I hope other people find the same hope and inspiration in what you're doing.
Marlon, I appreciate it, and I got to tell you, you're the first Marlon I've met in the world since my grandfather Marlon passed away. So it's yeah.
That makes me want to cry.
Wow, there's not too many of us.
There's not too many.
There's
one other friend of mine from college who's a Marlon, but you're the second, and we were super, super close. So I always got a soft spot for Marlons in the world. So nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on, man.
You made it.
You're here with us.
That was a lot. A lot of things that we'd rather, for the most part, not know existed, because it's so overwhelming and dark. But hopefully we can, by admitting the actual issues in the world, we can be part of the hope. Maybe.
I just kept thinking through this whole conversation, like, every time I wanted to physically pull away from some of the tougher stuff. And just for our listeners, now that they've made it through, we cut some of the really tough stuff from this episode.
Yeah.
But I just kept thinking, like, if this, like, he's doing this every day face to face with it, like, the least I can do is hear this and be somebody who, like, knows this so specifically now, you know, and it just feels different.
And I don't think he has to do this. I think you can be attorney general and not bring landmark cases against the most powerful people in the world. You could probably do that. I think it's been done.
Yep, but
he's
like
he's
one of those
definitely
one of a kind. Yeah,
fighting the fight. And you know, he has the family history and the, you know, sounds like the way he grew up was sort of preparing him for this in some ways. So I did try to a few times get him to open up a little bit, but I was like, kind of like, nah, I don't want him to get him to open up, because what if he all of a sudden starts feeling,
crack open something that he can't?
Yeah, I'm like, oh no, I just need you to stay on your horse and keep fighting this fight, man.
That's right.
Whatever I can do, get you a nice cold drink or something. Well, how can I help?
So he's doing the toughest stuff, but I know you and a lot of our listeners are parents, and knowing how, like, actively dangerous it can be when you are a young person on the internet, how can you talk to your kids, especially your younger ones who are just starting to get a sense of social media and stuff, about those threats, where they can, like, understand the importance and the seriousness of it, but where you're not making them terrified to just be in the world?
That is such a good question. I feel like,
thank you so much.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You're helping me. The way that I have done this and continue to do it. And I was raised by a single mom, and I do not know how she did it. And I'm still thankful. I'm pretty sure she's going to hear this, so love you. But I definitely use all of what's available to me as far as adult relationships before I bring something like this to my kids. Because for me, what I want to do is freak out, ignore it, get mad, get raging out at the, treatment of how people, because I'm scared, which is mostly why any of us feel rage, is because something scares us and then we want to get back in control of it. But what I do is go to the people who I trust, including my wife, and luckily she's, I don't know. I don't know if able to handle more is maybe in this area. Like, she can watch, Law and Order and not be bothered. Like, I can't even watch that at night. It gets in my mind and I'm like, gosh, what is this world? And I start to generalize it. She's more like, yeah, that sucks. And then, like, I look over and she's asleep. So that, yeah. And she might also be listening. So love you too. And thank you for walking with me through this. I think if you have other adults you can trust who can handle kind of your fears, your anxiety as a parent, your thoughts, and bringing the stuff to them unfiltered so that you can hear yourself talk about it, hear where your heart truly is, and then pick out the things that aren't going to scare the crap out of your kids and not give them your anxiety. They don't need to know the things that were talked about on this episode. Not at, 5 and even 10. They need to know that you love them, that if something feels weird to them or off or not like how you would treat them, and that's why being an example and doing your best to be an example and admitting when you F up to them in a nice way, just saying, yeah, I think I could have handled that better. I love you, and here's how I wish I would have done that. I think being honest and real to your kids and with your kids in front of them gives them sort of that truth meter and that compass to navigate other situations, and letting them know that, and some of the fears I have is that someone will make a kid feel shameful about something that they shouldn't feel shameful about, or make them feel scared to tell their parents. Like, if they don't have that and you tell them, hey, you can tell me anything, and you model that no matter what, even if you have your own anxiety, which we all do, parents, we all have it. If you can be a safe place that doesn't freak out when your kid has something to tell you, that's the key in my experience as a therapist, as a school counselor, as a parent. The key is to be someone who can hold a safe environment, be the pilot, not freaking out on the plane. You can freak out later with your co-pilot, or, at a pilot's convention or other adult relationships. But when you as a parent, you're kind of a passenger and a pilot, and you gotta make sure people feel safe and that they can come to you and let you know if something makes them feel weird or off or uncomfortable. In addition, there's other great, like, actual, books and curriculum out there. I think if you've listened to the podcast for any amount of time, I think we've had 3 or 4 people from Common Sense Media on, and it's because I use it as a parent. They have great, like, how to talk to your kid about this. Like, go on there and do it. So being safe, being loving, strong enough to handle things, at least in front of them, keep it together if you can, and if they do tell you something absolutely shocking and horrible, just make sure they know they're not alone, and you get the right help, and you protect them, and you let them know this shouldn't have happened. We're going to take it from here. We're going to get you out of this situation, or, depending on what's happening, make sure that they know that you are with them regardless of anything that happens. That's what kids need to know and to understand and to feel. Thanks for joining us today. We hope it helped. Stay connected at This Helps Podcast or at thishelpspodcast.com. The best way for you to support this show that you love so much, that is so near and dear to your heart, is by leaving a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. You need to know that really makes a difference. And if you could also just, tap that like and subscribe on YouTube, and you'll never miss an episode. Normally, I don't like the idea of being glued to your screen, but if it's to watch this show, double standard. So, see you next time.